The old photograph breathed, and something awoke. Intriguing mystery. Imagine finding an old photograph, a cherished memory, but something's wrong. A face you don't recognize, subtly emerging from the shadows, chilling you to the bone. What if this spectral presence isn't just a trick of the light, but a forgotten secret trying to resurface? When the photograph breathed, I thought it was the flicker of candlelight, a trick of shadows, a trick of my tired eyes. But when the woman in the picture, her pale face framed by lace curtains and that faint, knowing smile, exhaled again, fogging the glass from the inside, I knew it wasn't my imagination. I found the photo in my grandmother's attic, buried under yellowed letters and moth-eaten cloth. It was a portrait of a family I didn't recognize. 3 children and a woman in black, standing in front of a cracked mirror. No father, no photographer's name, only a faint handwritten note on the back that read, "Don't stare for too long." The attic air was heavy and stale, but the photograph seemed warm. The children's eyes were unusually bright, like there was still light trapped in them. I should have left it there. Instead, I brought it down to my room that night, curious about who they were. I placed it on my desk beneath the lamp. The woman's faint smile almost looked proud, protective even. But when I turned off the light, something shifted. There was a quiet inhale, a sound too deliberate to be the wind. The air grew colder. The shadows stretched longer. And then, from the glass of the photograph, came a subtle pulse, like a heartbeat. I froze. My breath fogged the surface. The woman's eyes, once downcast, were now looking directly at me. I stumbled back, knocking over the lamp, and the photo fell face down onto the floor. The room fell into silence, except for one sound. A single drawn-out breath. But it wasn't coming from me. When I turned the photo over again, the figures were gone. The empty background remained, the cracked mirror, the lace curtain, but the family had vanished. That night, the silence of my room felt alive. Every tick of the clock carried an echo, a whisper beneath it. At 3:11 a.m., my window fogged from the inside, and pressed into the mist were 5 distinct fingerprints, small, delicate, and impossibly cold. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I convinced myself it was just exhaustion and paranoia. Maybe the fog on the window was condensation. Maybe I'd imagined the moving eyes. But when I looked again, the photo was no longer blank. The family had returned, but they weren't standing as before. The woman in black was closer, her pale hand now resting on the glass from the inside. Her fingers were perfectly aligned with the prints on my window. I dropped the frame. The glass cracked across her face. A faint sigh escaped the fissure, like a breath slipping free. Desperate for sense, I searched the back again. This time I noticed faint scratches beneath the handwriting, words nearly erased. "She's waiting for the next frame." That night, I wrapped the photo in a towel and shoved it into a drawer. But the sound of breathing didn't stop. It grew deeper, closer. Each exhale came from inside the drawer. Around 2 a.m., the lamp flickered. I watched as the drawer slid open, inch by inch, until the photo slipped out on its own. The woman's cracked face was smiling again. But now her eyes weren't dull. They shimmered like living glass. I tore the photograph apart. Shreds fell to the floor like ash. I thought that was the end of it. Until the next morning, every torn piece had reassembled itself neatly on my desk. Perfect, whole, and freshly developed as though it had just been printed. Only this time, I was in the picture too, standing right beside the woman in black. My reflection in the photograph looked pale, drained. My eyes weren't blinking. The note on the back had changed again. "She's awake now. Don't look away." The next day, I went searching for answers. There had to be a reason that photograph existed. Why it acted alive. In the corner of the old marketplace, I found a forgotten photography shop. The sign above it read L. Voss Portraits, St. 1901. Dust clung to the glass display, and inside, dozens of portraits stared blankly back at me. Each one featuring the same woman in black, her faint smile repeated in every frame. The owner was an old man, his skin gray and his eyes clouded. When I asked about the woman, he went still. His hands trembled as he said, "If you've seen her, it's already too late." I pressed him for answers. His voice was barely a whisper. She was no ordinary subject. She was his wife, the photographer's muse. He used to say she was so still, so lifelike. Until the day she died in front of the camera. He didn't stop taking pictures. He just started developing different kinds. I followed his shaking hand toward a locked cabinet. Inside were stacks of photos, all with fogged glass and warped edges. In each one, faint traces of movement blurred the background, like the figures were caught mid-breath. The old man leaned closer and said something that chilled me completely. "She moves between the glass. Every time someone looks too long, she notices." I asked what happens if she finds you. His reply was barely audible. "She doesn't kill you. She takes your reflection instead." A crash came from behind the counter. A frame had fallen on its own. When I turned back, the old man was gone. But his reflection was still in the mirror, motionless, staring right at me. The room grew darker. The photographs along the wall began to fog simultaneously, as though someone behind each pane was breathing in unison. I ran out of the shop, my reflection flickering in every window I passed. But in each glass surface, I noticed something new. The woman in black was no longer smiling. She was following. By the time I reached home, every mirror was covered with frost. Even the screens, my phone, my TV, seemed to pulse with a faint rhythm. The photograph I had thrown into the river was back. It lay neatly on my bed, dry, untouched, and somehow warmer than before. Now there were two of me in it, one standing beside the woman, and another further back, half faded, eyes wide with terror. The air felt heavier, thicker. I could almost hear a soft heartbeat echoing through the walls. Every breath I took came out colder. That's when I realized the woman wasn't trapped in the photo anymore. She was in the house. The scent of river water filled the room. I saw wet footprints trailing from the window to the hallway. They led to my grandmother's old mirror, the one she used to cover at night. I reached for the cloth that draped it, but before I could lift it fully, something moved behind the glass. A figure, pale, breathing. The reflection blinked before I did. Its lips curved into that same faint, knowing smile. My lights began to flicker. The reflection reached forward, and I felt a coldness brush my cheek, like fingertips pressing against glass from the other side. Whispers filled the room. Children's voices, layered and overlapping. I realized then, they were the children from the original photograph, the ones who'd vanished. They weren't gone. They were waiting in the glass, watching, whispering. "She's almost through." The mirror fogged from the inside again. 5 small handprints appeared, then one larger. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was the faintest inhale, deep and steady, the sound of someone new beginning to breathe. When I woke up, I was lying in complete darkness. My body felt heavy, cold, stiff. The air smelled of chemicals and damp wood. I wasn't in my room anymore. I was in the old photographer's studio. The shelves were lined with portraits, hundreds of them, each one showing a face frozen mid-breath. I stepped closer and realized every single one was moving slightly. Chests rising, eyes shifting, faint fog on the glass. Then I saw it. On the central table sat a freshly developed photograph, still dripping. It was me, standing in the very same room, my expression blank, my eyes open but lifeless. The woman in black stood behind me, her hand on my shoulder. Her smile was wider now. Human no longer. I turned to run, but every frame on the walls began to exhale together, releasing a wave of icy mist. Faces in the photos twisted, their mouths opening as if gasping for air. I tried to smash one of the frames, but the glass refused to break. My reflection inside it, however, did. It shattered into hundreds of smaller versions of me, each blinking separately. And then, everything went silent. The woman stepped out of the shadows, her movements fluid, unnatural. Her eyes shimmered like glass catching candlelight. "You took the picture," she whispered. "Now you must stay in it." She lifted the camera, an ancient one with a cracked lens. When the flash went off, I couldn't scream. The light burned everything white. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't standing anymore. I was looking outward, pressed against glass, my breath fogging it slightly. In the distance, through a thin veil of dust, I saw the old man's shop door open, and a new customer step in. He smiled, pointing at a photograph hanging in the back. It was me, frozen mid-breath. And somewhere behind him, in the dim reflection of a mirror, the woman in black smiled again, waiting for her next frame.